can't.
Right.
It's been a pain.
Yeah. So I drove in all that crazy rain, but other than that, it wasn't so bad.
So
Oh,
you
really?
have a lot of
I
rain?
was worried about wind, and the wind it wasn't so windy.
Did you have a lot of rain, Label?
It was a lot of rain.
Well, there was
and
a
some of the
storm.
roads, I was trying to get to the oil, and I don't know the area so well. And I was following my GPS, and there was one of the roads that was flooded, so they closed it. And I don't know how to get around because I don't know, So I'm doing a circle, and then the GPS brings me straight back there. And I figured it out afterwards, but it took me extra half an hour. But
My brother
and then I
drove
went
from
over.
Boston.
Yeah.
From Boston to the Cape, no rain at all, he said. And even when they were there, that day, the next day, the weather was okay.
Because I think it went more north than the Cape. It went north of Boston even.
Anyway,
Yeah.
today I was able to get a refund for my ticket going there, but my ticket going back, I can't. I can only use it within 2 years because they won't give me a refund.
If it was right. So you bought them two separate tickets.
Exactly. You know the whole spiel.
I know.
I have to use it, and I have to use it from the States, leaving from the States.
Wow.
Yeah. It's okay. I'll get it.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll figure it out.
It's-
Next 2 years, you'll use it at some point. The problem is that you have to call back to use it, and you have to wait on hold again.
Because the other thing is I have to leave from the States, so I have to get a ticket maybe for my nephew's bar mitzvah if we fly there to New York. So then I'll use that ticket when we fly back home.
Right.
It's the end of October, his bar mitzvah, Chaye Sarah.
Right.
It's too bad. That's what I wanted to go there to speak to him about a little bit. Because getting ready for his bar mitzvah, I wanted to, give him a little bit of
Advartera.
koach, but didn't work out.
Right. Shem had other plans.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, so I'm gonna mute and feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question or a comment. We're recording these, that way those who missed the classes, we're gonna have them up. And we are on Daf Hey Amud Beis 5b, halfway, it's above halfway, but it looks like it's halfway. There's a new Mishnah in the second line of the bigger lines. A new Mishnah, so 5b. Those who are using the Steinsaltz, you are on page 30. 30? Yeah. No, it's page 29. Yeah, 29. 29 at the bottom. Oh, here comes David. Good. Welcome. Oh, he's not on yet. Okay, welcome, David. How are you?
Tonight.
No, I'm probably going to cancel it. No, I'm not probably. I'm going to cancel tonight because I didn't sleep that much last night, and I'm going to be exhausted by the time tonight comes around.
We'll do it next week. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly.
Just got in.
Oh, perfect timing. Welcome back.
Welcome back, David.
Welcome back.
Wow.
Okay, so we are on Daf Hey Amud Beis 5b. The first Mishnah on the page, because there's a second Mishnah closer to the bottom of the page. David, you're on page 29.
That's right.
At the bottom.
Right at the bottom.
Yeah. Okay, so a new Mishnah. It's a new statement from the sages, from the Mishnaic sages, and this statement obviously is connected with the concept of conspiring witnesses. So when it comes to conspiring witnesses, the concept of this Mishnah is an argument between the Sadducees and the sages. The Sadducees were of the opinion that the only way you kill a conspiring witness is if someone got killed because of their false testimony, right? So then they get killed afterwards. The sages say no. The sages say that it's only after the judgment has been rendered that this person deserves death penalty, but it wasn't meted out yet, and then they become conspiring witnesses. and then you have the conspiring witness gets that punishment. So let's see it inside. Masnisin Mishnah Eina Edim Zayumin Neragin. The conspiring witnesses do not get the death penalty. They do not get killed until the final judgment was rendered. The Sadducees are of the opinion that they only get capital punishment if they gave capital punishment to someone else, meaning the other person got killed already. And they bring a proof from biblical pasuk, Shenemar Nefesh Tachas Nefesh, that says a soul instead of a soul, right? It says a person instead of a person. So if one person got killed, so then the other person gets killed because of his actions, because he got someone else killed. Now, Amru Lahem Chachamim, our sages told these Sadducees, V'aloi kvar nemar, but doesn't it say in the verse, V'asisem loi kasher zamam la'aseis lachiv? It says in the verse that you do to the conspiring witness that which he conspired, not which he meted out judgment, that which he conspired, right? So it doesn't mean that it had to have happened already. Meaning that the pasuk says that he conspired to do to his brother, means you're saying his brother as if he's right here, means his brother was not killed. And that's the way the sages learned this verse. And if so, lama nemar nefesh tachas nefesh. So then why does it say one person instead of another person, right? That in the pasuk. So then, what do they learn from it? So that's what the sages say. Yachel mishashe kiblu edusan. Yeah, Hargo. You might think that if a witnesses come forward and give testimony, and it comes out to be conspired testimony, false testimony, but if the judgment wasn't rendered yet, so then we do not consider them conspiring witnesses for this halacha. And that's what we learn from Nefesh Tachas Nefesh, that only Misha Shekiblu Edusan, that only from the time that they accepted it, we might think that it's from the time that they accepted their testimony, Yargu, that they could get the death penalty. Talmud Loimar, since the pasuk says Nefesh Tachas Nefesh, they do not get the death penalty until the judgment was rendered. Until the judgment is rendered, they do not get the death penalty. But not that the judgment was meted out, that it happened already. And that is the way the sages learn. Now let's learn the Gemara. Tana. We learned in Abraisa, Beribi Oimer, Beribi is the name of a sage. He says, Lo Yargu, if they weren't killed, Neragin. Meaning, if the conspiring witness says testimony against the ankle deserves death penalty. So if Lo Yargu, if he wasn't killed yet, meaning the judgment was passed, but they didn't kill him yet, there's no capital punishment meted out yet. So then the conspiring witnesses, Neragin, get killed. But the halacha is that if they did mete out punishment and this person was killed, now the conspiring witness does not get killed. So that's the halacha based on verses in the Torah. Key point, based on verses in the Torah. Amar Aviv, now Beribi, who's a sage, so his father tells him, Bni, my son, Lav kal v'chaymer, isn't it a kal v'chaymer? Lav kal v'chaymer, isn't it a kal v'chaymer? Isn't something that makes sense? Amar lo. So Beribi answers his father and he says, Limadetanu Rabbeinu shein einshin min adin. We learned that we do not give punishment based on a kal v'chaymer. Meaning that if you want to give punishment, it has to be written in the Torah, that this is the punishment for such and such a case. We do not base it on kal v'chaymer, and we're going to give examples. So right here was an example. We know that a conspiring witness can get the punishment he tried to give to somebody else as long as the punishment wasn't meted out. Now, what if the punishment was meted out? We might say that it's a kal v'chaymer. Of course, he should get death penalty. Comes the Gemara and tells us that the halacha is that we do not give punishment like that based on a kal v'chaymer. It has to be said specifically and implicitly in the Torah. And since it doesn't, so you can't give that punishment. That's the halacha. Now, let's see where we learned this from. The Tanya, we learned in Abraisa this concept of not using a kal v'chomer, not using our brains to conclude that someone gets a certain punishment without it being explicitly mentioned in a pasuk, mentioned in a verse. Tanya, we learned Ish asher yikach es achaisoi bas aviv vay bas imai. Now there is a pasuk, and the pasuk says, the pasuk when it talks about immoral relations, who you're not allowed to have relations with. Here we're talking about close family that you're not allowed to have marital relations with. And in these kinds of cases, there is also punishment that comes with it, which, if I'm not mistaken, is malchus, is lashes. Now, the pasuk says, if someone has relations with his sister, but the daughter of his father or the daughter of his mother, right? So now we're talking about a half sister. We're not talking about a sister, a full sister, right? So now the Gemara says, or the Braisa says, Ainli elo bas aviv shaloi bas imai, and bas imai shaloi bas aviv, right? The pasuk only tells us that you're not allowed to, and you get punished for having marital relations with a half sister. Now, bas imay or bas aviv minayin. Sorry, it's not the lashes. It's karis. It's karis being cut off from Hashem. Now, but the pasuk is only talking about a half sister. So which pasuk tells us that you're not allowed to, and that you get punished with karis if you have relations with your sister from both your mother and your father, meaning a whole sister, right? So that's the question of the Gemara, right? And again, the Gemara is going to say that. So then the Gemara says, Talmud Laimar, we know this because there is a pasuk, and the pasuk says further on, Ervas achaisa gila avayna yisa. The pasuk says that that you're not allowed. It says specifically sister, and over there, sister is not with the prerequisite of just from the father or just from the mother, and therefore we learn from there that also a whole sister you're not allowed to, right? A sister from both mother and father. So now the Gemara asks and says, Ad shelo yoimar, why did the pasuk have to find a place where it says sister? Yeshli bedin. We could come to that conclusion on our own. We could make our own kal v'chomer. And what's the kal v'chomer? If this person will be punished, if he had relations with a sister from his father but not from his mother, or from his mother not from his father, right? So this is a form of a kal v'chomer, which is called a kol shekain. Of course, if he's a sister from both sides, from the father and mother, meaning a whole sister, of course he would be punished if he had relations with, right? So that's the question of the Gemara. The Gemara concludes, and this is what we're trying to prove. We're trying to bring up this concept. We learn from here that we do not give punishment based on our understanding. Punishment is based on verses in the Torah, and kares doesn't happen because it makes sense because they're kal v'chomer or something like that. Kares happens if there's a verse in the Torah. And we did find a verse in the Torah for this. Okay, now the Gemara says, Einish Shamanu. We just showed we're in the pasuk, we're in the verse. It talks about punishment for having this immoral relations, right? That's we know. But as hara minayin, where does it say that you're not allowed? Meaning there's one time in the Torah that says this is not allowed. And then there's another place in the Torah that says, if you do this, that your soul be cut off from God, right? That's the punishment of kares. So where is the azhara? Where is the warning, so to speak, the place in the Torah where it says that you're not allowed to do this? So the Gemara says, Talmud Laimar, that it says in the Torah very clearly, two chapters earlier that you're not allowed to have relations with your sister, whether it's from your father or from your mother. So the Gemara continues similarly, like we learned before. Ainli elo basav shlei basimai and basimai shlei basav. We only have from here a half sister, but basav basimai minayin. Where do we have the idea, the azhara, the warning? For a regular sister, comes the Gemara and tells you, the Braisa and tells you, Talmud Loimar. We learn it from a pasuk, two psukim later. Ervas b'eshes avicha meiled avicha chois chahi. It says that a certain scenario is similar to your sister, and since it mentions sister, and it mentions sister meaning in a format that you're not allowed to have relations, so therefore we learn from there that the azhara, the warning from having immoral relations with a sister. So the Gemara continues and asks the same question as before. This that it mentions, but I already have it from the halacha. We could come to this conclusion on our own with a kal v'chomer, a kol shekain. My mozar. Al basimai shlei basaviv and basaviv shlei basimai. Just like we gave the warning, the Torah warns us not to have immoral relations with a half sister. Basaviv basimai like kol shekain. What did we say? All the more so with a regular sister, right? With the kal v'chomer or kol shekain. So the Gemara's answers, as we mentioned before, halamadato shein mazhirin minadin. We learn from here that we do not give warnings based on a kal v'chomer. A warning in the Torah has to be mentioned explicitly in the Torah. Okay, so now let's go back. Let's continue with another concept here in the Gemara, and the Gemara is going to say chayve malkius minay. How do we know? Where do we learn? This that we talked about before. We mentioned that someone who gave testimony, two witnesses came, gave testimony, that someone else deserves death penalty. So what did we say? We said that they only get the death penalty if they became conspiring witnesses. They only get death penalty if judgment was passed, but punishment wasn't meted out yet, right? In that middle time, which could take a while. You know, how many people are in death row in the United States, right? It could take some time until, so in that meantime, there's time. So, but that is about the death penalty. So now the Gemara says, but where do we learn? Where do we learn about malchus, about lashes, that they only get lashes if judgment was rendered? And the Gemara answers, Talmud Leimar, Rasha. It's like Gzeira Shava. Gzeira Shava is a concept that if it says one word in our pasuk and it says another word in another pasuk where we know the halacha is like this, so therefore we learn. If the halacha from one place to the other place. So since it says Rasha, when it comes to
the same,
what?
Not another word, the same word.
The same word, right? I said another word. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, if it says the same word in one place and the same word in another place, so we learned that the halacha is similar in the two places. It's called a Gzeira Shava. So it says Rasha when it talks about those who deserve capital punishment, and it says Rasha by malchus, which is lashes. So it's learned from there that by sins by capital punishment, the halacha is that judgment has to be rendered, and only then will the conspiring witnesses, if they're found to be conspiring witnesses, get that punishment, is only if judgment was rendered, and that is about malchus. What about, if someone comes and says Yankel killed someone, but it was by mistake? So Yankel doesn't get the death penalty. What does he get? He has to go to Ir Miklat, right? He has to go to a city of refuge. So what if they were trying to get Yankel to go to a city of refuge wrongly, right? So now they have to go to a city of refuge. So how do we know that it's only after judgment was rendered? So as Yitzayach, because it says this, it's a Gzeir Shava that it has the same word in both places, the word Yitzayach. Okay, let's hear a story of Rabbi Yehuda ben Tabai. We're gonna finish with this story that Tanya we learned in Abraisa. Rabbi Yehuda ben Tabai, Era ben Achama. Rabbi Yehuda ben Tabai says, Era ben Achama is like a promise. I won't get solace. I won't see the solace of Jerusalem if I'm wrong. Basically, that's what he's saying. Era ben Achama, imloi. If this story didn't happen, what happened? Haragti eid zaymim. My court, my bezdin, killed a conspiring witness. Keep in mind, this is one witness out of the two. Think about it. You always have to have two witnesses coming forward, right? So what if two witnesses come forward and they say that last Sunday we saw Yankel kill Shmerel, right? And judgment was rendered. And then another two witnesses come and say, one of these two witnesses, Imano Yisam, you were with us. So how could you, right? So they made him into conspiring witness, but not both, only one of them. Okay, keep that in mind. But he says, why did I do it? What was the lahaitzi miliban shel tzdukim to eat that the Sadducees should eat their heart out, like that it was against them because they said because they say that the conspiring witness only gets killed if the person they said testimony was killed already. So I wanted to show them, and I killed the conspiring witness even before, once judgment was rendered, but before the person was killed, in order to show, right? So it's a crazy story. Shimon ben Shetach, famous Talmudic sage, Shimon ben Shetach is sitting there. And Amar le Shimon ben Shetach looks at him and says, Era ben Achama, he says, he's also like, he squares at him. He says, I won't see peace. Imloi, if the way you render judgment, what you did is shafachta dam naki. You spilled innocent blood. Why? What does it mean that you spilled innocent blood? Amru Chachamim, our sages have said, Ein ha'edim zaymin neragim. The halacha is that conspiring witnesses do not get the death penalty. Ad she'yizayim u'shneim. Only if both become conspiring witnesses. If you only make one of the two conspiring witnesses, then they doesn't get the capital punishment. And similarly for lashes, they don't get lashes unless you make them both into conspiring witnesses. Poor guy, Rabbi Yehuda ben Tabai felt very bad. Miyad kibel of Rabbi Yehuda ben Tabai she'enim meira ira el fnei Shimon ben Shetach. Rabbi Yehuda ben Tabai right away decided, and he made a thing. He realized that he did something wrong. He killed someone, basically, wrongly. His court of law killed someone wrongly. So he made a thing that he's never going to render judgment. His bezdin will never render judgment unless it was in front of Shimon ben Shetach. He wanted to keep in check, so he wanted to make sure that there's another rabbi there to make sure that he renders proper judgment. Chol Yamav, and not only that, he killed someone innocently. So Kol Yamav Shel Rabbi Yehuda ben Tabai, when all his life, Rabbi Yehuda ben Tabai he would go to the grave of that witness that he killed in order to ask for forgiveness. And when he would cry, he would call out, he was doing tshuva, whatever he was doing, but it was a loud voice, people would hear it. And people would go around saying that witness, it's his voice, the witness's voice, that he was killed in cold blood, and it's his voice, he's crying out from the grave. And Rabbi Yehuda ben Tabai would say, Amar Rabbi Yehuda ben Tabai would say, Kaili shelihu, it's my voice, it's not his voice. And how are you going to know that it's my voice and not his voice? Teidu, this is how you're going to know. The day that I die, you won't hear his voice anymore. You won't hear the voice anymore. So you know that it's me crying out, and it's not the dead person's voice, right? But the Gemara says, Amar lei Rav Acha brei Rav Rav Ashi, Rav Acha. Rav Acha, son of Rava, says to Rav Ashi, Dilma bedina ka ba'adei. So he says, it's no proof. When your Biyuda ben Tabai passes away and that voice stops, it's no proof that it wasn't the dead person's voice, because it could be that it was his voice. But now that the Biyuda ben Tabai passed away, they're sitting in judgment in front of the heavenly court, and he's meeting out, like he's demanding to right the wrong that was done in the spiritual world. So that's why you're not hearing his voice anymore. Or inami payuse paise, or maybe he got consoled and therefore he stopped. So just because Rabbi Yehuda Tabe passed away and therefore it stopped does not necessarily mean that it's not the voice of the person who of the person who passed away. And that is a very interesting concept of this idea of and how careful a person has to be, a rabbi has to be before he renders judgment. Okay, and this is where we're going